Well, good morning. My name is Nick. I'd like to welcome you again to Community Christian Church. Great to be together on this December morning. I'm guest speaking this morning, but I'm not a guest here at CCC. I've been around here pretty much since the door opened. My wife and my family and I were members here, and every now and then I get a chance to come up and speak, and I love getting a chance to speak here, particularly around Christmas time. Now, I don't know about you guys, but man, I really love Christmas time and all the stuff that goes with it. I really enjoy it. Our family has created a bunch of different traditions and different things that we do as a family that I really I can't wait for them every year. I think every family does this a little bit, right? Like you create your own little traditions and little ways of doing things. And each of those things is just a part of what it feels like to have like Christmas be just what you need it to be. So a couple of them our family does. I don't know if you guys have anything like this. Like one thing our family does every year is the kids will get in their pajamas. We go to Chick-fil-A and we get peppermint milkshakes. And then we drive around looking at Christmas lights for a couple hours, right? So we call it Christmas light hunting. That's our word for it. And I don't know if they like the Christmas lights or the Chick-fil-A more, but man, it creates a pretty nice evening for everybody. One of the things, I'm not much of a baker. I don't do a lot of baking. But every Christmas morning, our tradition is I will make cinnamon rolls from scratch. Like that's like our breakfast. I make way too many of them. We eat them again for lunch. It's just kind of a day full of sugar. Always look forward to that. Our traditional Christmas dinner is sushi. We go out and get sushi every Christmas. We've done that for years. Kids look forward to that each year. One of the things we do as a family is we'll go over to Valley View Farms and we'll walk around all the Christmas ornaments. And then every year, each kid gets to pick out their own ornament. And it's funny because then you almost have like this little time capsule of them over the years of like which ornament did they pick each year. It's like, oh, that's when you were in your fire truck mode. And like, oh, hey, ballerina. Right? Like it's like there's all that, you can like see it kind of progress along the way. And I was talking to my youngest, and she's 10, and I was talking to her about, we were actually thinking maybe going to a different store, a different selection, go to a different spot. And I mentioned this to her, and you would have thought I kicked her puppy. I mean, she looked at me with such betrayal, like how, like what? Like, no, wait. So we're not going to go to the regular store? Are we going to go to lunch the same place afterwards? Like, but I already know the aisles. I know which ones I like to look at. And it's like she could not grasp the idea that if that was not happening, something is really wrong. She looked at me like I was canceling Christmas. I mean, she's looking at me. She's like, no, you can't do this. Christmas would not be right unless we had it done the same way that we always do. And traditions around Christmas have a way of doing that a little bit, don't they? I think more with Christmas than maybe even some of the other holidays we celebrate. But what happens is that we each have these little things that we think, man, if this doesn't happen, Christmas just doesn't feel right. Like Christmas feels off. But what we want to focus on in the next few weeks is what does it look like to get Christmas right and some of the deeper things? When it comes to some of the spiritual or some of the heart or some of the real depth of what does it look like to get Christmas right? And I love all the stuff surrounding Christmas. I really do. All the lights and the decorations and the songs and the movies. I love all that stuff. But man, if we don't get it right in the deeper parts, we can miss out on something that is just kind of essential for us. And so this year, we're going to spend a couple weeks talking through, let's make sure we get Christmas right. So this morning, we're going to be looking at a portion of the Bible. We're going to see two different reactions to the birth of Jesus. Okay? There's one of these stories you're familiar with. Even if you've not really been to a lot of church in your life, you've heard one of these stories. The other one is not one we talk around Christmas so much. We're going to be looking at the book of Matthew in the 2nd chapter. So if you have a Bible, or if you want to kind of click open to your Bible, feel free to grab that out. But before we dive into Matthew 2, I want to give a little bit of background. Because I think if we don't have a little bit of background, we might miss some of the context of what's going on here. And so the two main players we're going to have on the stage that we want to make sure we're looking at is the wise men or magi and King Herod. Okay, these are the two players that we're going to talk about today. So let's talk just a little bit of background. Okay, so the magi, known as wise men, it's kind of a synonymous term for each other. They were kind of a mix between these like scholars or astrologers or historians. They held political power. They held a tremendous amount of influence. They were more than likely really, really wealthy people. These are like the elites. These are not like the normal Joes. Like these are higher up kind of folks. And they're from Persia, kind of modern-day Iran, that kind of area. And we actually normally, traditionally, will say there's 3 wise men. We actually don't know how many wise men there were, a number's not mentioned, but 3 gifts are mentioned that the wise men bring. And in the culture in the day, you would expect each person to bring a gift. It wasn't like there was a 4th one, and he really meant to bring something, but Amazon was late, and so they didn't have anything. Like, that's kind of not how it works. So 3 gifts, it might be fair to assume there were 3 wise men. These were highly educated, highly trained, highly respected, wealthy, and powerful people. And then we have King Herod. Now, sometimes in history, Herod is referred to as Herod the Great. And one of the reasons why he's called that is because he had a lot of building projects where it was just amazing buildings. Particularly the temple in Jerusalem, he rebuilt, and just a remarkable building. He was not called Herod the Great because he was great, because he's kind of the worst. I mean, he's just a terrible human. Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. So he was this bloodthirsty, murderous, paranoid egomaniac. He could just as easily have been called Herod the Butcher or Herod the Bloody. You see, Herod didn't come to power on accident, right? He fought and he killed his way there. And at this time, Rome was in power over Judea and the surrounding regions. And when there was unrest in Judea at some point, Herod went to the leaders of Rome and said, if you put me in as king of the Jews, what I will do is I will keep peace there. I will enforce peace in this region. I'll make this region peaceful for you. And he's going to do it brutally. He's going to do it at the edge of a sword on behalf of Rome. And so he marches back into Rome with Roman legions behind him. He reconquers Judea from this civil unrest, and he takes charge. And one of the first things he does is to address the Sanhedrin. Now, the Sanhedrin is kind of like a Jewish ruling council. It's kind of a mix between like high priests and judges. And one of the first things he does, he kills all of them. About 70 of them, puts them to death. Anybody that could threaten his power. Then he takes about 300 court officers that worked for the Sanhedrin, put them to death. All them killed. And then he starts kind of eliminating pretty ruthlessly anybody that might be a threat to his rule. He has his brother-in-law drowned. Then he kills his mother-in-law. Then he kills his own mom because she might be a threat. He's got 10 wives. He puts multiple of them to death. He kills 2 of his sons because they might be a threat. Actually, he kills a 3rd son. Emperor Augustus once said, it was safer to be Herod's pig than Herod's son. Toward the end of Herod's life, after this kind of brutal regime that he had, he summoned hundreds of important people from around the country to gather together. And instead of hosting them in some kind of feast, he captured all of them. And the order was that when he died, they will all be put to death so that there was a proper state of mourning around the country. Because when he died, he figured no one's going to mourn for him, so they might as well mourn for all these people. This is the kind of guy we're talking about here. You kind of get a picture of who this guy might be. And it's into this environment that the Magi enter. Now remember, Magi are from a whole other area of the world. Like, they're from a whole region. They don't necessarily know all the internal politics of the area. And so they enter into this region. This is where we're going to jump into the book of Matthew in the 2nd chapter. So we jump in. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. So the Magi come to Herod, right? They're going to check in with the king of the area, and they say, there's a new king that's been born, King of the Jews. We want to know if you know where he is. We've come to worship him. Now, knowing what you know about Herod, can you guess his reaction to the idea that there might be a new baby born called King of the Jews? So this is what we read in verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. And I'm going to guess that the disturbance that they were feeling was a little bit different from each other. Right? Herod is disturbed because something might threaten his power. The people are disturbed because Herod's disturbed. Right? And when Herod is disturbed, bad things happen. We read on. This is in verse 7. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out the exact time that the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report back to me so that I too may go and worship him. So there's this new threat that Herod sees, and he wants to eliminate it. But Herod is also lazy and a manipulator. And so he says to them, like, oh, yeah, I'm with you guys. This is amazing. This is so awesome. I'm so excited. You go find him. You let me know where he is. I'll be right behind you. I'll be worshiping right with you. Except that's not the plan at all. He's planning to go and eliminate this threat to his power. And then here, the Magi go along their way, and Herod stays in his palace. And we see them kind of diverge, both physically as well as spiritually. And this is what we read about the Magi. After they, that is the Magi, after they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over a place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. See, the wise men, they were seeking out a new king that had been born. And they found Jesus, and they worshiped him on bended knee. And this is an interesting juxtaposition because I think we can skip past this without thinking about the Magi, the wise men. These are some of the most intelligent, schooled, trained, respected people in the entire world. These are not regular folks. These are the elites. These are the top of the top. And they allow God to interrupt the entirety of their lives, to rearrange their complete schedules, to disrupt every aspect of their world, to seek out a new king that had been born. And then when they found him, they worshiped him for it. You see, they recognized something. They recognized that this new king that was born, he was greater than they were, was worthy of their praise. And then they offer gifts. And the gifts themselves have a lot of symbolic significance. They give gold. Gold, kind of the gift for a king, but a different kind of king. This isn't a king that rules with force. This is a king that rules with love and with sacrifice. They give frankincense, which is a type of incense that is reserved for religious ceremonies. But it's reserved often for the high priest in religious ceremonies. And this is a recognition that Jesus is in the role of high priest. And they give myrrh, and myrrh will be used to prepare a body for death. Be used to prepare a body for burial. We actually read later in the Bible that myrrh was used preparing Jesus' body for burial. It's just a symbol of how he was going to die. And so these Magi, these important, wealthy, powerful people, they encounter Jesus. And they recognize his authority, and they recognize his power, and they recognize who he is, and they kneel and lower themselves, and they worship. Herod has a different reaction. He flew into a murderous rage. Verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and in its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time frame he learned from the Magi. Herod loses it. And he is so insecure, and he's so hungry to maintain his grip on power that he orders the death of any boy 2 years or younger to try to make sure he's getting the time frame of when the child would have been born. Sometimes this is called the slaughter of the innocent. You see, interestingly, what this means is that Herod believed the Magi. What it means is that he believed that there really was a new king that was born, and this king really was powerful, and it would disrupt everything, and he was going to do anything he could to stop it. He was going to do anything to make sure that his power didn't slip away. So here's a story about people coming to Jesus and two very different reactions. And here's the reality. If we're going to get Christmas right, we have to pay attention to our reaction to the coming of Jesus. What this comes down to is, do we understand that in order to get Christmas right this year, to get Christmas right in our hearts, is to recognize that the birth of Jesus as a king is all about worship. Right? Worship is the proper ordering of things in our lives. That we're ordering ourselves under the authority of Jesus, that we recognize his authority over our lives. You see, Herod's legacy was Herod. Herod was all about himself, about protecting himself, protecting his influence. Right? He protected what he wanted in his plans above everything else. And Herod went out of his way to try to stop God. He brought the full force of every bit of authority he had, the full force of his government, the full force of his military, to try to stop God from moving. But God could not be stopped, and the world changed right below Herod's feet. But the Magi, they were able to recognize that God was doing something amazing and new, and that the only reasonable response was humility of lowering themselves and worshiping. That was the only reasonable response. Right? There's this battle between humility and pride that is taking place here. Right? The Magi, these powerful men, humble themselves, realizing, no, this is greater than me. And there's Herod, who could see nothing but himself. Now, look, I understand that the story of Herod might not seem tremendously irrelevant as a comparison point to our own lives. We are not kings with fantastic power and wealth trying to kind of hold on to things with our might. Most of us, we're just regular folks trying to get through the day without saying something stupid or getting a speeding ticket. I mean, like, we're just trying to get through life. But the reality is that what Herod expressed on this massive, brutal scale, all of us have to wrestle with in our own lives, in our smaller scales. How do you react when people overrule your goals or your ideas? How do you react when you feel like your power takes a hit? How do you react when you feel disrespected and something's not fair? How do you react when your spouse disagrees with you in a way that you find really frustrating? What do you do when there's a group project at school and you have to carry more weight than everybody else? As a parent, how do you react when your kids challenge your authority? When we are challenged, when our personal goals are thwarted, when our fun or our distractions or our enjoyment is interrupted, how do we react? And you see, the birth of Jesus, it changes everything with this. It changes everything. Because if there's not a king bigger than us, if there's not authority bigger than us, then why wouldn't I just do it my way? Why wouldn't I just kind of recognize myself as the ultimate authority and do what I want, how I want? You see, the birth of Jesus was disruptive. If we accept Jesus for who he says he is, that he is a king from a different kind of kingdom, and that he's bringing about a different kind of life in people, a new life in people, man, then the birth of Jesus is disruptive. It changes everything. We can't live the same lives. Instead, we recognize that we're under the authority of the king. I'm not free to choose my own destiny. The king chooses my destiny. The way of Jesus is good, but it is disruptive. If we take it seriously, it changes how we make our choices. It changes how we treat people. It changes how we see ourselves. If we're going to get Christmas right, then we have to understand the proper ordering of things in our life where God is bigger than us and our natural response is to worship. This isn't about status quo. This isn't about comfort. This is about rebuilding us and all of creation into what it was always meant to be, that we were who we were always meant to be. And with all of his power and all of his authority, Herod failed to realize that he was a small king sitting on a small throne, and that the great King of heaven showed up in his world. And instead of humbling himself before that king, before Jesus, Herod wanted to keep sitting on his small throne. He was incapable of worshiping anybody but himself. He was incapable of lowering himself below anyone else. And when we are faced with the birth of Jesus, when we're faced with a new king, when we are invited to step down from our own little thrones, when we're invited to kneel before God, do we? Do we worship God in our lives? Do we align ourselves in such a way that we recognize who God is and what that means for us? Even when we gather here and we sing together, when we use singing as a way of worship, think about the songs that we sing. It is a reminder of who God is and who we are. It's a reminder of the order of life where God is first and we are not. But because of that, man, we're invited into something amazing. And we all have small thrones, don't we? Small as they may be, we all have thrones we sit on. And every day we're tempted to sit on that throne and to fight for what we want, or fight for my own desires, fight for my own authority, to make myself kind of reign supreme in my own little world. We are invited with Christmas to recognize that my small throne needs to stay empty because I am worshiping at the feet of the throne of God. But what happens sometimes is that we are tempted to look at God as just kind of the answer to my problems. Right? I want you, God, carry out my solutions. Here's my list. If you could just rubber stamp these things, we'll be good. Like, here's my plans. Feel free to make a note on the side if you want, but more unchanged, the better. Instead of humbling ourselves to God, sometimes we just want him to kind of offer some solutions. When I was a kid, one of the gifts I wanted, and got, by the way, was a My Buddy doll. Anyone heard of a My Buddy doll before? Oh, yeah. Had a little song, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me. There was also a kid sister. A kid sister like the girl version of My Buddy. One thing to know about My Buddy, first of all, Chucky doll was based off of this. That's a different holiday. That's a whole different thing. Did not have a Chucky doll. I had a My Buddy doll. Now, My Buddy's body is plush. It's like a stuffed animal. And its head is solid molded rubber. You can knock someone out with it, right? Like the one rule. I have a brother, and we used to have like pillow fights or stuffed animal fights. And My Buddy was outlawed from any stuffed animal fights because it would end it, man. Like you'd make holes in walls with that thing. And I love the My Buddy doll. When I was a little guy, I used to carry this thing around everywhere. He got so ratty because I would just take him everywhere we went. And I'd like prop him up in a tree so he could like watch me play, or I'd like toss him around and we'd have fun. And of course My Buddy's cheering for me all the time. He's my buddy, right? But he goes wherever I go and My Buddy is my guy. He's on my team. And then when I'm done playing with My Buddy, I put him away. And sometimes I think we want God to be a My Buddy doll. I think that's kind of how we want it sometimes. Jesus, he's just my buddy. He's my buddy. He makes me feel good sometimes. He reassures me sometimes. Right? Like he helps me kind of feel relaxed every now and then. But when I don't want it, I just put him away. Just put him back in the box. It's okay. Just put him back in the box. Oh, there's something in the way you need to knock over? Yep, grab the My Buddy doll out. He'll knock stuff right on over for you. Oh, you don't want to knock things over? Those things you don't want to address? Just put it back in the box. Jesus is not our buddy. Jesus is our king. Jesus is a king. We don't get to decide to put the king away when the king asks something of us. We don't decide to get to put the king away when the king requires something of us that we're not comfortable with. And I think sometimes we get this a little bit twisted because, look, the reality is Jesus loves us. And he died for us. And it's because of that we can be a part of the family of God. But that does not mean that we have equal authority to God. But we are not God's equals. We are not. And the appropriate humility of recognizing, no, we've been invited to be servants of God. We've been invited to partner with God. The king has some amazing things he would like me to do in this world. He's prepared them for me. He's invited them to me. The proper and only appropriate response is humble worship, willingly worshiping, willingly deeming that, no, God is first and I am second. You see, because humility toward God, it leads to worship. Humility toward God, recognizing the proper placing of ourselves before God, it leads to worshiping God. When God's plan conflicts with my plan, do I set down my plan or do I hold on to it? When what God wills conflicts with what I will, do I set down what I will or do I hold on to it? We might not have the power of Herod, but we are tempted to do some of the very same things of holding on to what I want over what God asks. For Herod, he would scheme and he would fight and he would kill to hold on to it. It never works. Never works. Kings come and kings go. Empires rise and empires fall. And God remains. Right? The great King of heaven remains. So what does this look like for us? What does worship look like for you? Look, if we're going to get this Christmas right, we have to ask these kinds of questions of ourselves. Right? What does worship look like for me this year in Christmas in my lives? The Magi, when they went to worship Jesus, they were prepared to worship. They knew what they were about. They knew why they were journeying. They didn't stop at like the equivalent of like the first century 7-Eleven to grab a gift card because they were running late. They had prepared themselves ahead of time. They had the gifts prepared and ready. They knew they were going to worship. And it cost them something. Gold has always been expensive. It cost them something to worship. I mean, I think of myself sometimes. Do I prepare myself to worship? Even coming into a place like this sometimes, I know that I can be so tempted to be rushed or to be distracted or to, maybe I haven't really done what I could to get my mind and my heart in a decent place to really come before God. Look, if you're new here today, I'm so glad you're here. Maybe you're just visiting with us. Maybe this is the first time you've been to church in a long time. I'm really glad you're here. And I hope our time today is meaningful and helpful in you taking a step closer to God. But what happens with all of us is that as we journey nearer to God, as our relationship with God develops, it will raise questions in us about what is my relationship with God like? How am I responding to God? What does it look like for me to worship? Am I giving myself the best opportunity to draw near to God? Am I attempting to eliminate some of the distractions that just make it really hard? And the closer we get to God, the more we take that question seriously because we realize it's a real serious question. Look, I'm glad you're here no matter where you are in your life right now, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. I'm glad you're here. And I hope that you can take steps nearer and nearer to God. And as you do so, that your heart continues to be rightfully oriented toward God, that he is a king and we are not. God is first, and I will follow after him. If we're going to get Christmas right, we have to know Christmas is about worship. I don't mean this to sound alarming, but not including today, we gather 2 more times before Christmas, right? Next Sunday. Then the Sunday after that kicks off the candlelight services. We have 2 more times for Christmas. I wonder what it would look like. I don't know, maybe commit to the next couple weeks of make sure you show up. Maybe before you show up, check in on your heart. Did you prep yourself a little bit? Are you in a place where you can remember the relationship with God, that worship is what that looks like for us? To properly kind of have the posture of our heart reflect the reality of our belief. Maybe you need to engage with the story of the Bible. Maybe just jump in the book of Luke, start in chapter 2, read the Christmas story. Maybe you're kind of relying on, Linus to tell you the Christmas story, and maybe you just need to read it for yourself for a little bit. See what it says. Think about it a little bit. What would that mean for you? Man, I don't want us to miss out on this. There's so much good stuff that's available to us. We are invited into this amazing relationship with God that can change our lives in ways that we can't even imagine. Man, I don't want us to miss it. And in order for us to be ready for Christmas, we might need to take a little bit of a gut check on how we react when our power is threatened. How do we react when we're asked to step down from our small thrones? How do we react in our disappointments when our plans are not going the way we want? How do we react? That might give us a little snapshot of something we might need to pay attention to in our own hearts. The Magi, these important, powerful people, they lowered themselves even though they were important. They offered their gifts without expectation. They were willing to sacrifice because they realized that God is first and they are not. Right? That's the true heart of worship, is that God is first. One of the things that's interesting to realize is that the love of God and the love of Jesus expressed that love to forgive even some of the people that did the worst things to him. When Jesus was being crucified, he looked down on the people who were crucifying him and he forgave them. Here's an interesting thought. Jesus died for Herod. It's a challenging thought, isn't it? Herod was invited to go with the Magi. He could have went with them. He could have reordered his life. Or he could have lowered himself. He could have engaged with the God of the universe in a way that might have changed his life forever. But Herod couldn't see anybody but Herod. Herod couldn't love anybody but Herod. Herod couldn't worship anybody but Herod. And so he missed it. And the world changed, and he missed it. So this Christmas, I hope that we will check in. How do we react when we face our disappointments or our plans aren't going the way we want? In the losses and in the pains and the victories and the successes, God is working together for something greater than just our plan. God is working for something greater than that, and he has invited us to step in with him and to worship him. God cannot be stopped. He will not be stopped. He's not going to be bullied by our meager attempts of authority. But we are invited to come alongside his good plans for us. So are you willing to step down from your little throne? Are we willing to step down from our little thrones and recognize that the great King of heaven is on a throne and we are invited to come near it? Let's pray together. God, as we come closer and closer to Christmas, I pray that you will bring to our minds and to our hearts the places where we might struggle to recognize that our authority is not ultimate. I pray that you would help reveal to us the places where we were so tempted to do it our way, to get the things that we want, the places where we misprioritize, or the places where we value things in ways that you don't. I pray that you would bring to our attention any areas that need to be brought under your authority so that we can worship you fully with our hearts and with our minds and with our songs and with our lives, that we can worship you. And I pray for these next couple of weeks that all of us would be challenged to come before you as a king. Not as something that we control, not as something that just meets my desires or meets my needs, but as a king. And we thank you so much for Jesus, who came and was born and lived and died and then was raised again so that we could have new life. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.